We live in an age of miracles. We carry devices in our pockets that contain the sum of all human knowledge. We have conquered diseases, built cities that touch the sky, and connected the world in a web of instant communication. And yet, for all our progress, we are drowning in anxiety. The World Health Organization has called stress the health epidemic of the 21st century. We are the most comfortable generation in history, and we are also the most worried. Why? Dale Carnegie asked this same question in 1948, though his world looked very different from ours. He was a man who knew worry intimately. He grew up poor on a Missouri farm, was tormented by insecurities, and spent years trying to find a way out of the mental prison of constant fear. What he discovered, and what he put into this book, is not a magic formula. It is not a set of empty platitudes. It is a practical, hard-won guide to mental peace, forged in the furnace of his own anxiety. I am Anastasia Melesias. I am an author, not a therapist. I am not here to give you professional advice. I am here to share a book that has helped millions of people, including myself, to understand the mechanics of worry and to find a way to live with less fear and more presence. This is how to stop worrying and start living, as I have understood it. Worry is a strange thing. It feels so urgent, so real, so necessary. When we are in its grip, we believe that if we just think hard enough about our problem, we will find a solution. But that is almost never what happens. Instead, we spin in circles. We catastrophize. We imagine the worst possible outcome and then we live in that imagined future as if it were already real. We don't solve the problem. We just exhaust ourselves. Carnegie understood this. And the very first thing he offers us is not a pep talk. It is a method. A way to break the paralyzing grip of worry by forcing it into the light. He calls it the three-step formula for analyzing worry, and he borrowed it from an engineer named Willis Carrier, the man who invented the modern air conditioner. It is beautifully simple, and devastatingly effective. Step 1. Ask yourself, what is the worst that can possibly happen? Don't sugarcoat it. Don't avoid it. Look directly into the abyss. What is the absolute worst-case scenario? If you are worried about losing your job, the worst case is not just being fired. It's being fired, running out of savings, losing your home, and having to start over from zero. Say it out loud. Write it down. Face it. Step 2. Accept the worst. This is the hardest part. Our instinct is to fight, to deny, to pretend the worst could never happen. But Carnegie argues that until you mentally accept the possibility of the worst outcome, you will never have peace. Because as long as a part of you is screaming, "This can't happen," you will remain in a state of panic. But when you say, "All right. It can happen. I accept it," something shifts. The fear loses its power. The monster shrinks to a manageable size. Step 3. Now, calmly and quietly, devote your time and energy to improving the worst. You have accepted the possibility of disaster. Now, what can you do to make it even slightly less disastrous? If you lose your job, what is the first thing you will do? Who will you call? What skill can you learn in the meantime? What can you cut from your budget starting today? You stop being a passive victim of your fear and become an active agent in your own recovery. I think this is profound, and I want to reflect on it for a moment. What Carnegie is really saying is that the opposite of worry is not happiness. It is action. Worry thrives in paralysis. It is a parasite that feeds on uncertainty. But the moment you make a plan, any plan, the parasite begins to starve. Because you have moved from thinking to doing. You have stopped being a child in the dark and become an adult with a map. This method, of course, is not just for catastrophes. It is for every worry, big or small. And it is the foundation upon which everything else in this book is built. First, you learn to analyze worry. Then, you can learn to break its habit. Once you have analyzed your worry, once you have looked the worst in the face and accepted it, you have taken the first and most important step. But worry is a habit, and habits do not die simply because we understand them. They must be replaced. Carnegie knew this, and so he offered a set of practical techniques to break the cycle of anxious thinking. These are not theories. They are tools, tested and sharpened by thousands of people who used them to climb out of the pit of chronic fear. The first and most radical of these tools is what Carnegie calls living in day-tight compartments. The phrase is not his. He borrowed it from Sir William Osler, one of the greatest physicians of the early 20th century. Osler, facing the immense pressures of a medical career, learned a secret that he said transformed his life. He learned to shut the iron doors on the past and on the future, and to live in the present moment alone. Think about what that really means. How much of your worry is about yesterday? The mistake you made. The thing you should have said. The opportunity you missed. And how much of your worry is about tomorrow? The bill that will arrive next week. The conversation you dread having. The future that seems so uncertain. Now ask yourself, how much of your worry is about right now, this very second? Almost none. The present moment is almost always bearable. It is the weight of yesterday and the fear of tomorrow that crush us. Carnegie tells us to imagine a giant door. Every night, we must close that door on the past. And every morning, we must refuse to open the door that leads to the future. We must live in the only space where life actually happens, today. This is not a call to ignore consequences or to avoid planning. It is a call to stop living in two worlds that do not exist. The past is gone. The future is not here yet. All you ever have, all you will ever have, is this single, fleeting, precious day. The second technique is equally practical and even more direct. It is a question, a simple question that can stop a spiral of anxiety in its tracks. What are the odds? Carnegie tells the story of a man who was terrified of being buried alive. He was so consumed by this fear that he made elaborate arrangements for his coffin, including a breathing tube and a bell to ring for help. Then one day, he asked himself, what are the actual odds of being buried alive? He researched the statistics. And he discovered that the odds were so astronomically small that he had a better chance of being struck by lightning while winning the lottery. His fear evaporated. Not because someone told him not to be afraid, but because he forced his rational mind to confront the irrationality of his fear. Most of the things we worry about never happen. This is not a comforting lie. This is a statistical fact. Studies have shown that over 90% of our worries never materialize. And of the small percentage that do, most are far less severe than we imagined. We spend our days in a state of emergency about events that exist only in our minds. Asking, what are the odds, is a way of calling our own bluff. The third technique is perhaps the most counterintuitive. It is to put a stop-loss order on your worry. In the stock market, a stop-loss order is an automatic instruction to sell a stock when it falls to a certain price, to prevent further loss. Carnegie applies this logic to our emotional lives. We must decide, in advance, how much of our peace we are willing to pay for any given worry. If you are agonizing over a mistake you made at work, ask yourself, how much more of my life am I willing to give to this? 1 more hour? 1 more sleepless night? One more week of tension and regret? At some point, you must say, enough. I have paid enough. I am writing off this loss. I am moving on. This is not denial. It is emotional budgeting. You have a finite amount of energy, attention, and life. Every moment you spend worrying is a moment you will never get back. It is a withdrawal from a bank account that cannot be replenished. A stop-loss order is an act of self-respect. It is the decision to value your present peace over your past pain. And then, finally, Carnegie offers a technique so simple that it seems almost too obvious to mention. He tells us to get busy. To fill our minds and our hands with useful work. Worry, he argues, cannot survive in a mind that is actively focused on a task. The two cannot coexist. When you are deeply engaged in something that requires your full attention, your mind simply does not have the bandwidth to ruminate. This is why the loneliest hours, the hours when worry strikes hardest, are often the hours of idleness. Late at night, when the house is quiet and the day's work is done, the mind turns inward and begins to feed on itself. The cure is not to lie there and fight the worry. The cure is to get up. To do something. To read a book, to write a letter, to clean a room, to work on a project. Action is the antidote to anxiety. Motion is the enemy of fear. In the final part, we will explore the deeper, long-term strategies that Carnegie offers. Not just how to break worry in the moment, but how to cultivate a mind that is naturally more resistant to anxiety. How to build a mental immune system, so that worry, when it comes, finds no place to settle and grow. So far, we have talked about how to analyze worry and how to break its hold on us in the moment. These are essential skills. But Carnegie understood that the deepest, most lasting peace comes not from fighting worry when it arrives, but from building a mind that is naturally less prone to it. A mind that has cultivated a kind of emotional immunity. And for this, he offers us a set of principles that are less about technique and more about the fundamental orientation of our lives. The first of these principles is the power of positive thinking, but not in the shallow, dismissive way that phrase is often used. Carnegie is not telling us to ignore reality or to pretend that everything is fine when it is not. He is telling us to deliberately direct our attention. The mind, he argues, is like a garden. It will grow whatever you plant in it. If you plant seeds of gratitude, you will harvest contentment. If you plant seeds of resentment, you will harvest bitterness. The garden does not care what you plant. It simply grows. And so, Carnegie urges us to count our blessings, not our troubles. This is not a platitude. It is a neurological fact. The human brain cannot be simultaneously grateful and anxious. The two states are mutually exclusive. When you deliberately list the things you are thankful for, you are physically forcing your brain out of the fear circuit and into a different mode of operation. You are not denying your problems. You are simply refusing to let them be the only thing you see. This leads to the second long-term strategy, which is one of the most difficult and one of the most transformative. Carnegie tells us to accept the inevitable. There are things in life that we cannot change. A loved one dies. A relationship ends. An opportunity is lost forever. The natural response is to rage against these realities, to replay them endlessly, to ask, why, until our voices break. But this changes nothing. It only prolongs the suffering. Acceptance is not resignation. It is not weakness. It is the recognition that some things are outside our control, and that fighting them is like trying to stop the tide with your bare hands. When you accept the inevitable, you stop wasting your energy on the impossible and you redirect it toward what you can actually influence. You stop asking, why did this happen to me, and start asking, what can I do now? That shift, that single pivot of perspective, is the difference between a life consumed by bitterness and a life that moves forward with dignity. The third principle is something Carnegie calls the law of the mind. He says that our minds are like a stage, and on that stage, only one act can perform at a time. If you fill the stage with thoughts of anger, fear, and self-pity, there is no room for anything else. But if you deliberately place thoughts of peace, courage, and gratitude on that stage, the negative thoughts have nowhere to stand. They cannot compete for attention. This is why Carnegie urges us to fill our minds with thoughts of peace, courage, health, and hope. Not because these thoughts magically change the world, but because they change the only thing we can control, the internal environment of our own minds. The world outside may be chaotic, but the world inside can be ordered. And that inner order, that quiet center, is the source of all genuine resilience. And then, there is a principle that touches on something deeper than psychology. It touches on the spiritual. Carnegie tells us to forgive. Not for the sake of the person who wronged us, but for our own sake. Resentment, he says, is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. It destroys the one who holds it, not the one it is held against. Forgiveness is not saying that what happened was okay. It is saying that you are no longer willing to carry the weight of it. You are putting down a burden that was never yours to carry in the first place. Finally, Carnegie offers a principle that seems almost too simple to be effective, and yet it is perhaps the most powerful of them all. He tells us to help others. To get out of our own heads by reaching out to someone else. Worry, he argues, is fundamentally self-focused. It is the mind turning inward and obsessing over its own problems. The cure is to turn outward. To find someone else who is struggling and to offer them a hand. When you are consumed by your own troubles, go visit someone who is lonely. Volunteer. Listen to a friend. Do something, however small, that makes someone else's life a little better. What you will discover is that your own problems, which seem so overwhelming in the isolation of your mind, begin to shrink when you see the struggles of others. You realize you are not alone. You realize that suffering is universal. And you realize that the act of giving, of helping, of connecting, is itself a form of healing. And here, I want to offer a personal reflection. When I read this book, what struck me most was not any single technique. It was the underlying philosophy that runs through every page. Carnegie believed, deeply and genuinely, that worry is not a sign of intelligence or sensitivity. It is a habit. A destructive, learned habit. And like any habit, it can be broken and replaced. He did not promise a life without problems. He did not promise that applying these principles would make everything perfect. He promised something far more valuable. He promised that we could learn to face our problems with a steady heart and a clear mind. He promised that we could stop being victims of our own thoughts and become the masters of our inner world. And that, I believe, is why this book, written in 1948, still resonates today. Because the world will always give us reasons to worry. But we, each of us, have the capacity to learn a different response. We can live in the present, not in the past or the future. We can accept what we cannot change and change what we can. We can fill our minds with peace and our days with useful work. And we can remember, always, that the antidote to worry is not certainty. It is action. It is gratitude. It is love. I am Melesias. This was How to Stop Worrying and Start Living by Dale Carnegie, as I have understood it. Thank you for listening. If this story moved you, please subscribe. And remember, the garden of your mind will grow whatever you plant. Plant carefully.